in 2006 with Krishna and Guru's mercy. Mataji is engaged in many services like cooking, preaching, conducting Sunday school for kids of all ages, conducting Bhakti Vriksha programs for devotees, many scripture reading, chanting, and Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam sessions in English and Telugu on a daily and weekly basis. She is a postgraduate in computers and works as a software professional, has 3 kids, and practices Krishna consciousness along with her Prabhu, His Grace Rupa Noga Krishna Das, also a disciple of His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Maharaj, along with kids. With this, Mataji, I would like to welcome you to our Partsarthi Foundation, and we are very grateful that you have accepted our invitation. And Mataji will be sharing thoughts with us on Chapter 6, Shlokas 19 to 27. Thank you very much, Mataji. My humble obeisances at your lotus feet. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Ji, Dandavat Pranams. My humble obeisances to all the devotees assembled on the call. I feel myself very fortunate to associate again with Partsarthi, and for my purification, share these verses, discuss and share my thoughts and what Prabhupada is explaining on these verses. We'll start with Mangalacharan prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yutapadakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitanscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Krupa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadharam Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are reading from chapter 6, Dhyana Yoga, from verse 19. So, a quick recap on this chapter before we go to 19th verse is like Krishna is explaining about Ashtanga Yoga in this chapter, as that is also followed by a group of yogis who are seeking absolute truths. So, Dhyana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, which has 8 limbs. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. So, Samadhi is the advanced and the last stage in Dhyana Yoga, which is complete absorption in the absolute truth. So, by the process of meditation, yogis achieve that stage. So, Yama is the stage where we have to follow the regulations and prohibitions that we should not be doing. Niyama is the things that we should be doing in this process. Asana, bodily postures, how should we sit, how should our eyes should be, our neck should be, in what place we are sitting. Pranayama, controlling the breathing. We have 10 vayus in our body. So controlling those vayus, those air movements. So when we control those air movements, soul gets strength to control the mind. So pratyahara is withdrawing the senses from the external objects. Right now, our senses are looking outside for happiness and enjoyment in the external sense objects. So because in the fourth stage, these yogis have controlled the life here through pranayama, they are able to control their mind, and now mind controls the senses. As we all know the hierarchy, soul, intelligence, mind, senses. So soul actually has to use intelligence, control its mind, through that control the senses. Then we are in a more elevated stage and we are making use of your human form of our life, because soul's constitutional position is to act as the servant of the Lord. So if soul controls all these things, then soul will engage in service of the Lord. But most of the times we are under the control of the senses. So senses, wherever they seek happiness in the external material objects, our mind goes there. We will use our intelligence to even enjoy that material thing even more better. And soul thinks that is happiness, but looking for happiness in the wrong place. So pratyahara is withdrawing these senses from the sense objects. The harana is fixing the mind on the Lord's form, on the absolute truth. And dhyana, intensified meditation, or like more focus, like there is no deviation. And then samadhi is a stage where we got completely absorbed. We are absorbed so much so in that we are only aware of one thing that we are meditating on, even though there are numerous things around it. Our focus, our mind, our consciousness, everything is completely absorbed in that stage. So yoga ruksha is the beginning stage of this yoga, and yoga rudha is the advanced stage. And from 13th verse to 23 verse, Krishna is explaining how one can attain 10 to 32, how people can attain, grow, advance in these stages of meditation. And when we see Prabhupada's shortcuts, we see how nicely Prabhupada explains to us, those who are practicing Bhakti Yoga can achieve these things. So now coming to the 19th verse, Yata Deepo Nivatasto Ningate Sopama Smrutam Yogino Yata Chittasya Yunjato Yogamatmanaham. As a lamp in a windless place does not waver, so the transcendentalist whose mind is controlled remains always steady in his meditation on the transcendental self. A truly Krishna-conscious person, always absorbed in transcendence, in constant undisturbed meditation on his worshipable Lord, is as steady as a lamp in a windless place. So here the example that is given is like a lamp in a windless place. So when we lit a lamp and we put outside where there is wind, the flame will flicker. The flame will flicker, and after some time, if the wind is heavy, the flame will go away. So how do we understand this example? This is for those who are practicing the dhyana yoga. They're almost nearing the advanced stage. So they have already done the pratyahara. That means the senses are not looking outside. Mind is also not looking outside. Everything has turned inwards. So this word is very difficult to understand. What is that turning inwards means? Turning inwards means seeking pleasure from the self, from the Atma, and realizing the self. And once we realize the self, we know ourselves, then we immediately know that what is our position with respect to the absolute truth, and we make our connection with the absolute truth, and we derive happiness from that. So this yogi, through his meditation process, has come to this stage. So yato deepo nivatasto nengate sopamana smrita. So like a lamp which does not flicker in a windless place, a transcendentalist whose mind is controlled remains always steady in his meditation on the transcendental self. So for us, those who practice the Bhakti Yoga, what is the wind? Wind is the material desires. Material desires are like wind, and lamp is like our consciousness. Our consciousness in its pure state knows its position, because consciousness is a sign of a soul. Chitta. Chitta is like the sign of the soul. Presence of soul is known by consciousness, the awareness of the body. But right now, our consciousness is disturbed. It is not focused on one thing. It's not in its constitutional position. It is going around seeking happiness in various material things, because it is impure. It is thinking it is body and it wants to enjoy. And when we have material desires, the bigger the material desire, the anxiety is more. The bigger you have a lot of things, like we all think, those who don't have always think that I don't have bigger house, otherwise I will not have this tension. I don't have a lot of money, then I won't have this tension. But if you go and ask the people who have all those things, they have their set of anxieties and tensions. Who will take away these things? Sometimes I see some of the people who don't have anything sit peacefully, because there is no fear of losing anything. The bigger the material desires, the bigger the material assets we are accumulating, we are increasing our attachments to these material things, which can be easily experienced by all of us. You go and buy a costly, expensive car. The first 1 month, 2 months, even a small scratch on it, or somebody throws something inside that, we don't know where that anger is there inside us, which comes out as if the world is going to end, and we will scream, shout, we'll do all those things. We forget even the person who has done that is a small kid or an elderly person who is not able, who did not do it intentionally. So our intelligence completely gets blinded, because we have attachment to the bigger material assets, and it creates anxiety in us, it creates stress, and it agitates our mind. Because it agitates our mind, we will not be able to fix our mind. So the lamp here is consciousness, which needs to be fixed on the Supreme Lord. The wind is actually the material desires. If we see in the 18th verse, Krishna says, when the yogi, by practice of yoga, disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of material desires. So once we are devoid of all material desires, then only we can attain that samadhi stage, where our consciousness is fixed on the Supreme Lord without distractions, without any disturbances. Right now, we struggle a lot to sit down for 2 hours and chant. Sit down and chant, focusing on the lotus feet of the Lord itself becomes a Herculean task for us, as our mind is going everywhere else, seeking material things. So the more we seek material things, the more material anxiety, the more agitation, the more distraction. So the whole purpose of our spiritual practice, our sadhana, is to make our consciousness fixed and more productive, more focusing on the Supreme Lord. So how do we do that? We have to stay away from material desires. The people who are on Jnana Yoga or other paths, they like completely be devoid of desires. That is the stage which is very impractical to achieve. But we can be devoid of material desires. Every desire that is arising in our heart, if we can spiritualize that desire, if we can bring Krishna into that desire, slowly, initially we may be doing it for ourselves, but we are offering it to Krishna and do. So slowly our consciousness gets purified, and we'll come to a stage where we can very easily keep ourselves away from the desires which are not anymore our needs. We won't run behind the wants. We will take care of the things only that are needs, because we are in this material world. We have to maintain this body. So there is no material, even if we do have material activities or worldly activities, the more interaction with these things, the more and more we engage ourselves. Sometimes people who are advancing, they think that I know how to control. I know that this is a material activity. This is not spiritual. I can go here and I can come out safely from that. We may be going inside those worldly and material activities 10 times, and we may have come out 9 times outside safely. That one time is enough for us to get that. So we have to be always aware of the internal, we have to be always aware of the strength of the external energy of the Lord Maya, who works for him. So we have to be very careful, and as much as possible, we should keep us away from the material desires. Then our consciousness gets focused on the purpose of human form of life, that is attaining the Supreme Lord. So here Krishna says that yogis who come to that stage samadhi, who has completely absorbed themselves in the self, their consciousness is like unwavering, like a lamp in the windless place. 20 to 23. Yatro paramate chittam niruddham yoga sevaya yatra chaivatmanatmanam pasyanatmani tushyati sukhamatyantikam yattha buddhigrahyamatindrayam vetrana chaivaham stitaschalati tatvatah yam labdva cha param labham manyate nadikam tatah yasmin stito na dukkhena gurunapi vichalyate tam vidhyad dukkha samyogha yogam yoga samnitam. So Prabhupada explains, Prabhupada combines all these verses and explains what happens when we completely get ourselves absorbed in the Supreme Lord, in the self. So yatro paramate chittam, in that state of affairs where cease, because one feels transcendental happiness. When we withdraw our senses from the material objects for sense gratification and engage the senses in the service of the Lord, we feel transcendental happiness, and eternal happiness. The nature of the material happiness is that most of the times we don't get what we desire. Even after getting what we desire, they are not up to our expectations. Like we may be expecting this will give me this much of happiness, and after that I'm completely satisfied, satiated, and then I don't seek anything more. So that will be our expectations. But when we really go there and reach that stage, it feels to us as if like, oh, it's over. It is this much. For this, I've been hankering so much all these years, and it finished in a few minutes. That is second nature of the material desires. And third is, even if we achieve the happiness that we were expecting by fulfilling that material desire, the nature of the material things is that they are not permanent. They are very temporary. After a few days, the same thing, same desire which got fulfilled does not give us the same kinds of happiness. And seeking happiness is the nature of the soul. And it is not getting that happiness which it used to get in its pure state by connecting itself to the Lord, because the soul now forgot that it is eternal, it is divine, and soul is thinking that it is body, and it is looking in the external material things for spiritual happiness, which is very impossible, which is not at all possible. The soul it is unhappy and moves to the next thing. So here, Krishna is saying, in the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth. And upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of the greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. So these are the samadhi stage, the stage where we get completely absorbed in the in our spiritual life. That is the state where what we will feel transcendental happiness realized through the transcendental senses. And what else? That is, we achieve transcendental happiness, and we also are situated where we are not shaken. Whatever may be the greatest difficulty, we are never disturbed in our spiritual practice. So by practice of yoga, one becomes gradually detached from material concepts. This is the primary characteristics of yoga principle. And after this, one becomes situated in trance or samadhi, which means that yogi realizes the super soul through the transcendental mind and intelligence without any of the misgivings of identifying self with the super self. So when we do any of these practices, karma, dhyana, or jnana yogas perfectly, then we won't mistake ourselves to be the Supreme Lord. We will be very clearly seeing ourselves and also the Supreme Lord and our relationship with the Supreme Lord. That is the whole purpose of the yoga system, which has been designed by the Patanjali, not the yogas that we are seeing in this modern world, where there is no concept. Very rarely, maybe 1 or 2 yoga places, you will see that yoga is not for reduction of weight or maintaining a proper maintaining a physical for a physical body, because most of the times we seek yoga to lose weight. We consider it as one of the exercises which is related to the body, but it is an exercise which is related to the soul, to pull the soul away from the material world towards the spiritual world. That is the actual purpose of the Patanjali yoga system. Some unauthorized commentators try to identify the individual soul with the super soul, and the monists think this to be liberation, but they do not understand the real purpose of Patanjali system of yoga. There is an acceptance of transcendental pleasure in the Patanjali system, but the monists do not accept this transcendental pleasure out of fear of jeopardizing the theory of oneness. So the people who think that right now we are under illusion, as soon as this illusion goes away and we realize that we are the super soul, or we are the supreme self, then we are like liberated. Like as soon as we realize that, all of our illusion will be going and we will be merging with the supreme Jyoti or supreme light. And there is no such thing as a pleasure, because they don't accept in the personal form of the Lord. So when there is no personal form of the Lord, there is no interaction, there is no exchange of emotions, then there is no pleasure. So they don't accept that. But Patanjali yoga system actually accepts that and says that the yogi attains that stage where he derives, where he relishes the eternal happiness in the Samadhi stage. He becomes completely detached with the material things and he starts seeking happiness by knowing himself and also the Supreme Lord. But a set of philosophers does not accept that. The duality of knowledge and knower is not accepted by the non-dualist, but in this verse, transcendental pleasure relies to transcendental senses is accepted. And this is corroborated by Patanjali Muni, the famous exponent of the yoga system. The great sage declares in his Yoga Sutra 4.33, Purushartha Sunyanam Gunanam Pratiprasavaha Kaivalyam Swarupya Pratistava Chitti Sekti Riti. This Chit Sekti, or internal potency, is transcendental. Purushartha means material religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and at the end, the attempt to become one with the Supreme. This oneness with the Supreme is called Kaivalyam by the monist. But according to Patanjali, this Kaivalyam is an internal or transcendental potency by which the living entity becomes aware of his constitutional position. In the words of Lord Chaitanya, this status of affairs is called Cheto Darpana Marjanam, or clearance of the impure mirror of the mind. This clearance is actually liberation, or Bhavamahadavagni Davagni Nirvapanam. The theory of nirvana, also preliminary, corresponds with this principle. The Bhagavatam 2.10 is called Swarupena Vyavastitaha. The Bhagavad Gita also confirms this situation in this verse. So the Patanjali yoga system, the Dhyana yoga system, actually defines Kaivalyam as the process of knowing the real position of the soul. We only have one position, we only have one designation, one role, that is that we are the servants of the Supreme Lord. But we get carried away by many roles. Even after coming into the spiritual practice, we make our life very complicated. By giving ourselves our own titles, like somebody who sings better will be called by 10 devotees like, you sing so much good. Then we also think that I'm a great singer, I'm a senior singer, I'm the best singer. So that title we add to ourselves. Similarly, everything we add titles, even in the spiritual life, which is meant to realize that we are spiritual beings, part and parcel of the Lord, and the only designation that we have is that we are the servant of the Lord. So in Patanjali yoga system, in Dhyana yoga system, Kaivalyam really means the internal transcendental personality by which the living entity realizes his constitutional position. It is not meant for any other purposes, but it is used for, yoga system is used for everything except this. Even sometimes we find that people who go there and say that we found mental peace, we are out of stress, we are out of anxieties. That is not any good stage. Not having mental stress, not having material anxieties is of no use when we don't engage ourselves in the service of the Lord. It is still seeking happiness with this material body, because these anxieties, this stress are causing us pain and we are not able to enjoy this material body. So this material body is not really meant for our own enjoyment at all. It is just a vehicle which we have to use it in the service of the Lord. After nirvana, a material cessation, there is the manifestation of spiritual activities or devotional service to the Lord known as Krishna consciousness. In the words of Bhagavatam, Swarupena Vyavastitaha, this is the real life of the living entity. Maya or illusion is the condition of spiritual life contaminated by material infection. Liberation from this material infection does not mean destruction of the original eternal position of the living entity. Patanjali also accepts this by his words, Kaivalyam Swarupa Pratistava Chikti Sakti Iti. This Chit Sakti, or the transcendental pleasure, is real life. This is confirmed in Vedanta Sruta as Anandomaya Abhyasat. This natural transcendental pleasure is the ultimate goal of yoga and is easily achieved by execution of devotional service. So the pleasure-seeking nature is actually soul's inherent desire which seeks happiness, but it is not the material happiness, it's the spiritual happiness. It's the transcendental pleasure which the soul can derive when it goes back into its original position, when it goes and connects to the Supreme Lord. And the whole Patanjali yoga system is also meant to derive this. Bhakti yoga will be described. This natural transcendental pleasure is the ultimate goal of yoga and is easily achieved by execution of devotional service or Bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga will be vividly described in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So there are two kinds of samadhis that Prabhupada explains in this. So this verse, in the yoga system, as described in this chapter, there are two kinds of samadhi called Samprajanata Samadhi and Asamprajata Samadhi. When one becomes situated in the transcendental position by various philosophical researchers, he is said to have achieved Sampragnata Samadhi. In the Asampragnata Samadhi, there is no longer any connection with the mundane pleasure, for one is then transcendental to all sorts of happiness derived from the senses. When the yogi is once situated in the transcendental position, he is never shaken from it. Unless the yogi is able to reach this position, he is unsuccessful. Today's so-called yoga practice, which involves various sense pleasures, is contradictory. A yogi indulging in sex and intoxication is a mockery. Even those yogis who are attracted by siddhis in the process of yoga are not perfectly situated. If yogis are attracted by the byproducts of yoga, then they cannot attain the stage of perfection as is stated in this verse. Persons, therefore, indulging in the make-show practice of gymnastic feats or siddhis should know that the aim of yoga is lost in that way. So Prabhupada is saying how the main purpose of the Patanjali yoga system is lost. So when we are practicing this yoga system, the byproducts of yoga are like we get the siddhis, anima, nigama. So we get these 8 siddhis where you can walk on the water, you can become big, you can become small. So if we get attracted, if we get distracted, sidetracked to using those siddhis and achieving some things in the material world, then we lost the whole purpose of the Patanjali yoga system, because it is completely opposite for which it has been designed. So the 2 kinds of samadhis which are explained here are sampragnata samadhi and asampragnata samadhi. So sampragnata samadhi is like meditating on various material objects, which are like, people, they keep, when they start the meditation process, sometimes they keep a light or a lamp or a single object and they focus meditation on that. They will be constantly focusing and looking at it. And like how when you go to a theater, even though there are so many things around you, like you have people next sitting to you, there will be chairs and all, but when we start watching the movie, you completely get absorbed in the movie. So sampragnata samadhi is like they start practicing the meditation by keeping a light or a lamp in a room and in a dark room and start focusing on that. Slowly, they come to a stage where they don't need a gross object for meditating. They will start meditating, focusing in the mind on an object, on a subtle object like lotus feet of the Lord or Krishna. Krishna explains in the earlier verses that how a yogi should meditate by focusing on the lotus feet of the Lord. So the meditation starts with the lotus feet of the Lord. So it is not in front of us as a physical object, but it is inside the mind. Slowly, by practicing that, one comes to a transcendental position. Asampragnata samadhi. It is with no object. It is like cessation, completely cutting off us from all the material things. In that way, they start focusing on this. So yatra means in this stage, when a person completely, if you see yatropa paramate chittam niruddham yoga sevaya, when a person completely turns inside and focuses on Krishna, like those of us who are practicing bhakti yoga, when we keep in center Krishna, and when we do every activity, everything in relation to Krishna, what happens at this stage? We will yatra uparamate chittam, means we will stop. What we will stop? Our consciousness stops seeking happiness from the material things, and then it goes to the higher level of chitta. Niruddham yoga sevaya. Mind is completely controlled. What it will do after concluding, then what? Etra chaiva atmanam. Right now, control of mind is required. We have controlled our mind from the external objects, but if we don't engage the mind internally, then the mind will lose its control. So when after the mind is controlled, now the mind is completely purified. It's not seeking any external things. And then it is turned inwards and it sees the self, it sees the soul. Pasyan atmani tushyati. As soon as, like how when we find ourselves, let's say we lost ourselves, we lost our way. As soon as we find a way, like we are going somewhere and we lost our way, we are full of anxiety and stress. And as soon as we find ourselves, as soon as we find a way to get out of that, we derive happiness. Right now, the soul is lost in different kinds of bodies from so many lifetimes. So when it starts practicing the yoga, and then when it realizes that it is the soul, it feels delight from inside. So Krishna here is saying external activity is stopped. After stopping external activity, what we should do? We should start deriving happiness from inside. And then what happens next? Sukham atyantikam yatyad. Ultimate happiness. The happiness is ultimate. It's not material happiness. It's spiritual happiness. Spiritual happiness does not require any external object. And another nature of spiritual happiness is that it is constantly growing every day, and it is new every day, which is completely opposite to the material happiness. So when we feel that kind of an happiness, what happens? Buddhigrahyam atindriyam. Atindriyam means this happiness is beyond the indriyas, beyond our material senses. We are deriving this happiness through our transcendental senses. See, the soul, when it gets captured in this body, also have a spiritual body, but it's not completely evolved or completely developed. When we are progressing in our spiritual life, when we are getting ourselves purified, our spiritual senses, the divine senses, the transcendental senses start growing, and we are seeking the transcendental pleasure. So when we seek the transcendental pleasure, the material pleasure is nowhere standing in that way. So we achieve ultimate happiness. The two things that stops us from progressing, the greatest achievement, the two things that stops us that we achieve as we progress in the Krishna consciousness is we no longer hanker for happiness in the external things. We start deriving happiness from the Krishna consciousness activities, and we will no longer be lamenting. So that is what actually in this verse Krishna is saying. What does this yogi achieve? This yogi achieves that, like, he found boundless transcendental happiness, realized to the transcendental senses. When our senses get purified, when we will achieve this transcendental happiness. And also what happens? One never departs from the truth. See, once we know who we are, like if let's say we lost our way and we are going everywhere else, and once we find our way, we won't again get distracted and go into the other ways. We will want to go to our destination. So similarly, the soul, once it realizes that it is divine, it does not belongs to this material world, it will never depart from there, because after it realizes that it is soul, it immediately realizes the super soul also, and it start getting the transcendental happiness which it was looking so far outside and it is not getting. So in that position, that soul is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. That's why when we see in the movies, the yogis who are practicing the yoga, rain or shine or thunders or anything, they don't move anywhere, because their senses are no longer seeking anything from outside. Like how when we are in sleep, we don't know what is happening outside. Similarly, the senses are no longer are aware of the external things. They are completely turned inside. So for that person, anything happening outside, happiness or distress or misery, is not going to affect him. The best practice. See, practicing dhyana yoga in this age is very, very difficult. We can't sit even for 10, 15 minutes straight up and practice this yoga. So if we see in all the purports, Prabhupada very clearly brings out how one can achieve this through devotional service. The best practice of yoga in this age is Krishna consciousness, which is not baffling. A Krishna conscious person is so happy in his occupation that he does not aspire after any other happiness. There are many impediments, especially in this age of hypocrisy, to practicing Hatha Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. But there is no such problem in executing Karma Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. As long as the material body exists, one has to meet the demands of body, namely eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. But a person who is in pure Bhakti Yoga or in Krishna consciousness does not arouse the senses while meeting the demands of the body. So we know the purpose of the body. The body's purpose is to engage, is to keep the soul tact in that and engage in the service of the Lord. So when we are doing all these things, eating, sleeping, defending, or mating, we know their real purpose, so we don't get attached to them. So what happens when we don't get attached to them? We don't go into, we don't be very particular, attached that, I only need this kind of a food, I only this kind of a bed, I will only be like this. So many these unnecessary things we kept around the things, and we get so attached to these things and we get carried away, everything gets cut. So, but a person who is in pure Bhakti Yoga or in Krishna consciousness does not arouse through the senses while meeting the demands of the body. Rather, he accepts the bare necessities of life, making the best use of a bad bargain, and enjoys transcendental happiness in Krishna consciousness. He does the bodily activities for the necessary things. See, as soon as we speak that we are not body, it doesn't mean that we should neglect our body. Maintaining a healthy body is very important. For what? So that we can engage in the service of the Lord, not to engage in the sense gratification. So when we know this purpose, when we know the purpose of the body, that we have to engage in Krishna consciousness, then we will focus on satisfying the needs of the body, but not the wants of the body. So all of our anxiety, stress, or because we try to satisfy the wants of the body. And when we are trying to satisfy the wants of the body, thinking that we derive happiness, we get carried away from one want to another want, and we lose the purpose of the whole human form of life. But a Krishna conscious person who is advancing, who is making sadhana, who is having a quality of sadhana, who is able to control the mind and control his senses, know the real purpose of the life, and he keeps it to the bare minimums. He is callous towards incidental occurrences such as accidents, disease, scarcity, and even death of a most dear relative, but is always alert to execute his duty in Krishna consciousness or Bhakti Yoga. So it is very natural for him to engage in Krishna consciousness activities. Any of these things will not disturb him because he knows the reality that he is not this body. Accident never deviate him from his duty. As stated in Bhakti Yoga, Agama Payino Nitya Stam Titikshasva Bharata. He endures all such incidental occurrences because he knows that they can come and go and do not affect his duties. In this way, he achieves the highest perfection in yoga practice. This stage of not getting affected by the accidents or deaths of the relatives or diseases, or not having something, comes only when we connect ourselves to the Supreme Lord and start deriving happiness. So immediately we may think that, Mataji, I'm not at that stage right now. So should I stop practicing? We need to practice to go to that stage. We need to practice. We need to increase our sadhana to go to that stage. There is no other way going there. Like somebody will not take us and put us in that situation where we suddenly become spiritual and we will be completely detached from the material things. We need to elevate ourselves through the sadhana that we have, Mahamantra that we have, to that stage, very sincerely, keeping faith in words of Krishna, Guru, and senior acharyas. We may be listening to a lot of lectures, we may be hearing, we may be reading. All those things can only affect to a certain level. But if we are not practicing them, if we are not chanting sincerely, if we are not making use of the instructions that we are reading in Bhagavad Gita in our real life, we will not go anywhere. The actual purpose of Bhagavad Gita is not that I can recite any sloka from anywhere, I can quote any verse, I can explain any verse better. The real purpose, if anybody says that I know Bhagavad Gita, does it transform you from bodily conscious to soul consciousness? Many people often ask, how do we know we are progressing in spiritual life? How do we know we are getting success in spiritual life? These are the two measurements that we can think. If you no longer hanker for the material things, and if you no longer lament for losing the material things, then we are actually really making progress. So a devotee of Lord is like, when he gets something, he uses it in Krishna service. When he doesn't have that, he doesn't feel bad about it, and he engages himself in the service of the Lord by chanting. So if the two things that we can think, hankering, when we achieve samadhi, what will we lose? We lose hankering for the material things because we achieve complete satisfaction in the spiritual things. And what else happens? There is absolutely no lamentation for anything, because we know that we are not this body. Any big thing cannot deviate us. Guruna papi vichalate. Krishna is saying that mind is not wavering at all. He lost something, he has an accident, today he got to know that he's going to leave the body in 10 days. Anything in this world is not going to deviate him from his spiritual path. So how do we come to that stage? By our sadhana. Sadhana helps us to go to that stage. And when we are doing sadhana, we have to be very sincere. We have to be sincere to Guru and Krishna, and sincerely, wherever we are, in whatever position we are, we chant sincerely, then we will come to this stage. Next verse, 24. Sanishchayena yoktavyo yoga nirvana chetasa sankalpa prabhavan kamam stektva sarvana sheshataha manasaivendriya gramam vinimya samantataha. One should engage oneself in practice of yoga with determination and faith and not be deviated from the path. So this is what it is. One should abandon without exception all material born of mental speculation and thus control all the senses on all saints by the mind. So we will also go to that samadhi stage. When will we go to that samadhi stage? When will we attain perfection? When will we go to that stage? When we practice with determination, nishchayena, determination. Like one day we chant 16 rounds, the next day we chant 1 round. After that we don't chant for 6 months, and then we again chant. Whatever the number that we have committed, we need to chant that regularly with determination. The devotee who is practicing sincerely, qualitatively, also have 24 hours. The devotees who are struggling also have 24 hours. But the difference is that the devotee who is making progress or who's constantly chanting is like setting his priorities right. He is having determination set at the right, that this is what I have learned. I'm going to put it into practice. And this is the first thing. This is my priority. So without deviation, anirvinna chetasa, not in mind, when we practice with determination, giving up all material born of mental speculation. All our material desires are born of material. Kamam stektva. All the material desires we have to give up. In other words, we have to spiritualize those desires. We have to see as any material desire comes, the person in Sattva Guna thinks and acts. So as soon as you are getting agitated by a material desire, we should step back and sit down and think, is this my want or a need? If this is a need, I will act upon it. If it is a want, then we also have to see, is this going to help me in my Krishna consciousness, or it is going to take me away from Krishna? If it is going to take me away from Krishna, let me control myself, let me control my mind and not engage in it. Most of the time we think that fulfilling a desire will make us not have that desire again. Let's say like you are having craving for a gulab jamun. We think that having one gulab jamun will remove that craving. Engaging in that sense gratification actually increases that craving. Fulfilling a material desire actually makes us desire more and more. So it is very difficult for us to go to a stage where we don't have any desires, because in 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna already says desires are like incessant flow, like how river goes into the ocean. It's like that. The only thing that we can do is transform those desires, convert them into spiritual desires. So you may be wondering, like, not all desires can be spiritualized. If we then slowly, if we have a goal that I will spiritualize my desires, those desires which cannot be spiritualized will go out of our list slowly, and we'll start growing. So the yoga practitioner should be determined and should patiently prosecute the practice without deviation. So we have to voluntarily have that determination. Many people think that determination comes within inside. Right now, I don't have it, so I don't need to practice it. And I can wait for determination to come one day. Today, maybe tomorrow night or day after tomorrow night, Krishna will come in my dreams and he will say, so this is the holy name, please go and chant, or he will make us chant. First of all, we need to desire and we need to voluntarily practice the determination. One should be sure of success at the end and pursue this course with great perseverance, not becoming discouraged if there is any delay in the attainment of success. Devotional life requires a lot of patience. The moment you come to know that you are pregnant, you won't have baby next day. And we need to wait 9 months for that. And every process, even for those when kids are young who wants to become engineers or doctors or astronauts, as soon as they think they won't become, there is a process for it. You have to go through that process patiently without getting deviated. Same way with devotional service. No, there is no exception here. People think that people who are devotees, something is happening, Krishna is favoring them and they are automatically, and those who are not, is Krishna is posing obstacles. No, it is us who don't have faith in the words of acharyas, in the words of Krishna, that we don't take that seriously. When people are saying chanting of holy name sincerely, we need to chant until the stage we get ruchi. We think that right now I'm not getting ruchi, so there is no ruchi in the chanting of the holy name. We make that decision because I didn't see, like how an experiment, like if I see only in my town white birds, so I go and claim that there are only white birds, are only white color, as long as I don't see a black bird. So we are like that. Because I didn't experience, it is not true. So the truth is defined by the acharyas, Guru, Shastra, Sadhu. These are the three who are defining that, and we need to have faith in that, and we need to we have to be determined. Not becoming discouraged if there is any delay in the attainment of success. This is something which devotees who are practicing should know. There will be bad days in our practice. Let's say something, we are not still at an advanced, elevated stage, and something that has happened in our life has slowed down our progress. So the moment it gets slowed down, we immediately think that anyway it has slowed down, so let me pick up. The only way to come out of this is start lifting us from there and going and practice. Success is sure for rigid practitioner. Ustaha nischaya dhairya tattat karma pravartanat sangatyagat sato vritti sadbhir bhakti prasidhyate. One can execute the process of bhakti yoga successfully with full-hearted enthusiasm, perseverance, and determination. So enthusiasm, utsaha, it is very, very important. Every day, the morning, like today you go to bed, we need to tell ourselves, like how when you are going to your desired job, or when you are going and joining in the college that you have been hankering for many days, you can't stop thinking about it whole night. In the same way, we need to start practicing. Right now, it is not spontaneous for us. Right now, it is not spontaneous. We are not like those devotees, pure gopis, who can't stop thinking about Krishna. We need to practice, like before, like how they say affirmations in the day, in the beginning of the day. Similarly, before going to bed, we all should try a practice saying that tomorrow morning, I'm going to have a good day with my sadhana. I'm going to wake up, chant, read, and practice. So we should keep telling to ourselves that. Then it becomes our priority. If we don't even tell to ourselves, we don't even meditate on it, if we don't even conform to ourselves, we may completely even forget that, and some material thing that comes that day may take a priority. So for any of us at any stage of life, the best time to practice or chant is early in the morning, before the whole world wakes up. If we can start at least 10 minutes before everybody wakes up and sit down and chant without thinking, we need to have that enthusiasm. Before sleeping, we need to encourage ourselves. We need to tell ourselves that tomorrow I'm going to chant. I'm going to chant quality rounds. I'm going to chant and hear. I'm going to focus on lotus feet of the Lord and chant. And perseverance and determination. When we do this, we will sure achieve the success. If we are not able to achieve the success, means we are lacking some of this. As per determination, one should follow the example of the sparrow who lost her eggs in the waves of ocean. A sparrow laid her eggs on the shore of the ocean, but the big ocean carried away the eggs on its waves. The sparrow became very upset and asked the ocean to return her eggs. The ocean did not even consider appeal. So the sparrow decided to dry up the ocean. So she began to pick out the water in her small beak, and everyone laughed at her for her impossible determination. The news of her activity spread, and at last Garuda, the gigantic bird carrier of Lord Vishnu, heard it. He became compassionate toward his small sister bird, and so he came to this sparrow. Garuda was very pleased by the determination of the small sparrow, and he promised to help. Thus Garuda at once asked the ocean to return her eggs, lest he himself take up the work of the sparrow. The ocean was frightened at this and returned the eggs. Thus the sparrow became happy by the grace of Garuda. Similarly, The practice of yoga, especially Bhakti Yoga and Krishna consciousness, may appear to be a very difficult job, but if anyone follows the principles with great determination, the Lord will surely help. For God helps those who help themselves. Prabhupada wonderfully concludes this. Krishna himself helps those who help themselves. If we are not helping ourselves, if we are not determined, then nobody can help us. So those of us, like a sparrow taking water away from an ocean, is inconceivable to us. It's an impossible task. But the intention, the determination of the sparrow attracted Garuda, attracted mercy of a pure devotee of Lord, attracted mercy of Krishna. Same with us. Those who are struggling in our sadhana should confide in senior devotees whom we can trust and say, I want to chant, I want to do this, but I'm not able to do this, Guruji, Prabhuji or Mataji. Can you help me? How I can work around it? And when they say that, we should follow that with determination. We should at least try to follow. And when we try to follow, we face new challenges. We have to go back again saying, I tried to do that, but I have this new challenges. Then they will help us. And when we are constantly trying, Krishna starts helping us, seeing our determination to do the things. And when Krishna starts helping, he will give us right intelligence, right control of senses. This all happens when we are keep trying, when we are determined, when we have faith in the words of Krishna, acharyas and sadhus, and when we start doing that. If we are not helping ourselves, we are not seeking help, then nobody will help us. So enthusiasm. Many people think that, like, I know I don't feel like chanting. There is no other way to improve the chanting other than chanting. So you should chant more when you are not feeling like chanting. Somehow or the other, sit down, take your mala, put everything away, sit down and chant. And when chanting, cry that you are not able to chant sincerely. Pray to Krishna that you are not getting taste for chanting. Then Krishna helps. So here, determination, the sparrow's determination, this example we should think. Most of us may think that, oh, I am full of material desires. I have so many material problems. I have so many difficulties. I won't be able to come to a stage where I can sit down and chant. Trust me, devotees, there will come that day if we are determined to do that. So Krishna is telling here, one should engage oneself in practice of yoga with determination and faith. So these are the important things we should have. Determination. And what should we give up? Material desires. Material desires only for bare necessities of the life. Don't run behind the wants. How much ever we fulfill them, they are not going to give us satisfaction at any point of time. Controlling our senses and engaging ourselves in spiritual practice is going to give us happiness. 25. Senair uparamed buddhya dhruti grihitaya atma samstam manah krutva nakinchid abhichintayet. Gradually, step by step, one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence, sustained by full conviction, and thus the mind should be fixed on the self alone and should think of nothing else. By proper conviction and intelligence, one should gradually cease sense activities. This is called pratyahara, the fourth stage in the Ashtanga Yoga. Yama, niyama, asana, and then pratyahara. That is the yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, and pratyahara is the fifth stage of yoga. So Krishna is saying that this is called pratyahara. The mind being controlled by conviction, meditation, and cessation from the senses should be situated in trance or samadhi. At that time, there is no longer any danger of becoming engaged in the material conception of life. In other words, although one is involved with matter, as long as the material body exists, one should not think about sense gratification. One should not think of no pleasure aside from the pleasure of Supreme Self. This state is easily attained by directly practicing Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada is saying we will come to that stage where we will not have any pleasure aside from the pleasure of the Supreme Self. We will gradually, easily attain this stage when we have faith in Guru, Krishna, Prabhupada, and chanting of the holy name of the Lord. The only thing that we have to think, Many times we hear to a lot of lectures, we feel like, oh, I'm not able to understand the concepts, or we are not able to follow the things. We all should see how is the quality of our chanting. When we are practicing the regulative principles, chanting sincerely, associating with devotees, and reading the books and eating prasadam, and not losing the hope and doing them determinedly, we will come to that stage. See, somebody who is at 70% of their life, they only have to work 30% to reach 100%. Some of us may be starting at the 1% in our devotional life. So we may be struggling a lot, but there is no other way to go to the next level. The only way is to keep practicing with our own struggles, with our own things, and we will come to that stage. So by proper conviction and intelligence. So Prabhupada is saying that we need to have that conviction and intelligence, that faith. Faith is, which is very tender in the beginning, but the success formula is like, we need to be conviction, we need to be keep trying, and we need to be determined to do that one. Yato nischalati manas-chanchalamasstiram tatas-tato niyamaitad atmanyeva vasamyat. This is a famous question everybody will ask. When chanting, mind wanders. And Krishna, from wherever the mind wanders, due to its flickering and unsteady nature, that is the nature of the mind. It flickers, it's unsteady. It's a nature of it. What we should do, what is the way to fix it? One must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the senses. It is going, so today the mind is going 10 times out of our chanting and going on to the material things, and 10 times we brought it back. So now mind registered that there is some resistance. So distraction is also focus of mind, concentration is also focus of mind. Distraction is also focus of mind on multiple things. So whenever it is going out on the focused object, when we make a practice to bring it back, mind learns that. And next time, when we keep practice, registers that when it goes there, it has to come back. And slowly it goes lesser, like 5 times, 4 times, 3 times. Later, it stops going back, because we made mind practice to focus on the desired object, that is the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. The nature of mind is flickering and unsteady, but a self-realized yogi has to control the mind. The mind should not control him. One who controls the mind is called Goswami or Swami, and one who is controlled by the mind is called Godasa, or the servants of senses. A Goswami knows the standard of sense happiness. In standard transcendental sense happiness, the senses are engaged in the service of Rishikesa, or the supreme owner of the senses, Krishna. Serving Krishna with purified senses is called Krishna consciousness. That is the way of bringing the senses under full control. What is more, that is the highest perfection of yoga practice. See, many of us who are neophytes, or who are at the beginning stages, think that if I don't engage myself in sense gratification and engage in Krishna's service, I'm depriving myself of something. That's what we think. We are diseased right now, because the only happiness that we know is the material happiness. We still did not come to a stage where we can achieve the spirit, where we are experiencing the spiritual happiness. So we are like neither ka na udhar ka, like we are in between. So we are very confused. See, we are hearing that material happiness is not permanent, but we only know that. We have not yet realized the spiritual happiness. We did not go to that stage yet. We are in the center, and we are trying to practice the spiritual life, but we are not getting there. So we are getting confused. But the acharyas, Krishna, devotees are all saying that when the senses start deriving transcendental happiness in the service of the Lord, that they will be more happy than they are engaged in the material things. So right now we may not be experiencing, because we are still contaminated. We are still not pure. Our mind is still not pure. Our mind is not devoid of the lust, anger, greed, envy, madness, and illusion. So that's why it keeps reminding us that no, happiness is not here. Happiness is in the material things. Now, mind, if we chant until the mind gets purified, then mind starts getting under the control of the soul, and we start deriving the transcendental happiness. So the real happiness the senses achieve only when they are engaged in the service of the Lord. And we need to go to that stage. The only way to go that stage is practicing Krishna consciousness sincerely and purifying our senses, which are right now contaminated, and seeking happiness in the objects which are not, which are temporary and not real, and they are not giving real happiness. Prashantamanasam he enam yoginam sukhamuttamam upaiti shantarajasam brahmabhutam akalmasam. The yogi whose mind is fixed on me worthy attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. He is beyond the mode of passion. He realizes his qualitative identity with the Supreme, and thus he is freed from all reactions to his past deed. Brahmabhuta. Brahmabhuta is realizing that we are soul, we are part and parcel, we are divine, we don't belong to this material world. Right now, we are captivated in this material body, and we are conditioned. Whatever the limitations this body has, we are feeling that this body is going to die. So the soul is thinking that it is also going to die. This body is a woman body. So the body is thinking that, soul is thinking that I am woman, but soul is neither a woman or a man or an American or an Indian or a black, white, no color for soul. But we carried away by these all designations so much so that we lose the purpose of the soul in all these things. And not only that, we carried away by these designations so that we commit so many sins also. So Brahmabhuta stage is being free from the material contamination and situated in the transcendental service of the Lord. Madbhaktim labhate param. One cannot remain in the quality of Brahman. One cannot remain in the quality of Brahman, the absolute, until one's mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord. Savai manas Krishna padara vindayo. To be always engaged in the transcendental service of loving service of the Lord, or to remain in Krishna consciousness, is to be factually liberated from the mode of passion and all material contamination. So we have to make sure that we are packing our day with Krishna consciousness activities. Initially, the mind will reject, will not encourage, will not cooperate. It will give you all kinds of, it will remind you all kinds of sense gratification that you have been enjoying from so many lifetimes. The moment you say that, I want to go and engage in Krishna Katha, I want to go and chant, mind will immediately remind your favorite show or something that you have to do, and then you will get carried away by that, because that's what the mind from so many lifetimes. Mind is nothing but the storage of the impressions. So if we want to change our mind, we have to purify the storage. Right now, that storage is having layers and layers and layers, layers and layers of material sense gratification. We have to start removing one layer. How thick is our layer? That much time we will take to reach to the pure mind stage. That much practice we need. So keeping Krishna's lotus feet fixing in our mind, either physically or in a subtle way, when we practice our devotional service, when we chant our holy name, our mind started focusing on the Krishna, focusing on Krishna. And what will happen at that time? Prasanta manasam, peaceful. Mind becomes peaceful when it is fixed on the lotus feet of Krishna. Not when we go, like let's say some of us think that going on a camp for 10 days, mind will get peace, it gets de-stress, removes the anxiety. But after the 10 days, it's back to normal. So, but once we fix the mind on the lotus feet of Krishna, even though we are sitting in a marketplace where there is so much of noise, so much going on around us, we will be very peaceful. We will be very happy once we fix the lotus feet of the Lord. Prasanta manasam, it is certainly yoginam sukhamuttamam. Once whose mind is fixed on the lotus feet of Krishna, he gets uttamam sukham, highest happiness. All of us like this world, this thing. In the material world, we seek that highest pleasure. I want the biggest house. I want the biggest thing. I want the highest happiness. And Krishna is giving away the secret for that. He's saying, if we fix our mind on the lotus feet of Krishna, we will get sukham uttamam. Upayati Santa Rajasam. His passion is pacified. Santa Rajasam. So he's above the mode of passion. Brahma Bhutam Akalmasham. As soon as we get ourselves to that stage, we are freed from all of our past sinful activities. So by constantly, determinedly, with full faith and conviction, practicing our Krishna consciousness, regularly chanting, hearing, associating with devotees, eating Krishna prasada. Many of times we think that everybody says these four things: association, books, chanting, and eating prasadam. I've been doing that, but I don't see any change, or it is not happening. It can't be this simple. It can't be this easy. Actually, Krishna conscious life is very simple. We just make it complicated. We complicate the things. We don't have that patience to control our mind and get ourselves absorbed in what we are doing. Even when we are hearing to Krishna Kada, we will be thinking about something else. We won't be giving our 100% there. When we are chanting also, we won't be really chanting. We'll be thinking of what we have to do next day or what happened previous day. So when we start living in that present moment, when we absorb ourselves in the activity that we are doing at that point of time, without any conditions, like, oh, this Mataji is not a good speaker, this singing nicely, this here it is. Remove all those things and just see Krishna in everything. Just see Krishna. When we start doing that, when we start seeing Krishna, even though that Mataji who's not speaking good is speaking Krishna Kada, I'm interested in that. I'm not interested in judging or analyzing the skills of the speaker. I'll go and listen to that. Somebody is singing, I will listen to that singing, and I will use that opportunity to focus on Krishna. So the success comes when we keep Krishna in the center, when we absorb ourselves in that spiritual activity that we are doing at that point of time without thinking anything else. Most of the times we overthink. All our problems becomes because of the overthinking, or thinking about the future gives us anxiety. Thinking about the past makes us worry, and we stop living in the present and not absorbing ourselves in the activity that we are doing at that point of time. As we have learned already in this previous chapter, that our mind can be our best friend or enemy. So there is no enemies outside or no friends outside. Mind is something, this mind concepts we see here in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, but we see a lot about it in 11th canto of Bhagavatam, Bhikshu Gita, in 5th canto of Bhagavatam, conversation between Jada Bharata and the king. I suddenly forgot his name. So they also speak about that. So mind can help us when we make it friend, when we engage. So don't think that I can't control my mind. My mind is like this. All of us can control the mind. If we cannot control the mind, Krishna would have already given those categories who cannot control the mind. Mind just needs practices. Mind just needs its old impressions of material sense gratification to be replaced by the Krishna's activity. Once we do that, it starts helping us. It will start reminding us that I have to chant, you have to be absorbed. It will make us progress in our Krishna consciousness. So today, this is the verses that we have focused, like until 32 is how we can attain to that Samadhi stage. So right now, 27 is realizing the Atma. So by making our mind focus, bringing it back from wherever it is going, we will make it focus on lotus feet of Krishna, and with determination, giving all the material desires which are not there, which are not necessities, we will rise to that stage. I'm going to stop here. Any devotees have any comments or questions or corrections, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mataji. Very, very, very beautiful session. I have no words to describe. It was my first time listening to you, and I have no words to express. It was very nectarian. Before we go to anybody else, Mataji, my book is full already, writing points. You mentioned that how do we know if we are making progress in Krishna consciousness? And you mentioned that we have to there are 2 points that we have to keep in mind: hankering and lamentation. And towards the end, also, you brought that point that we have to be patient and not complicate things. But how do we know that hankering for material things is going? Like, what should be our benchmark year over year or month over month to see if that hankering is getting reduced, or at least is at the same level and not actually increasing?
Oh, see, this is one word why when I read this, Chaitanya Charandas Prabhu wrote this one line, like mind your mind. Like you start minding your mind, like you start noting what your mind is saying. So how do we know we are not hankering? It's so simple, Mataji. Like when the whole world is running behind the material advancements, like right now you see, you may be living in a house, you may be having certain kind of material assets, and the things are progressing so much, but you're not missing them. You're not feeling like you want them. See, like now we know that we may not express that outside. We may be posing like a good devotee outside, but inside we know we may be seeking at one point of time, even though we don't tell others outside, like, oh, it is nice if I have this, it is nice. So you are no longer even internally anchoring, like you are very peaceful, because most of the times when we seek something internally, we are very agitated. We won't be knowing, we will be cranky, we will not be saying that, but we are very cranky, we are very unhappy. So we have so many things, but we are still unhappy because we might have something somewhere, and our mind registered that you need that, and we start. See, most of the problem comes, if you see and leave it, it is not a problem. Mind brings it back inside and you start contemplating on that, like, yeah, and once you contemplating, what you will do? Oh, if I have that, I will be like this. If I have that, I will do this with that. And you start building dreams on it. And now you know that you can't achieve that. And you start feeling that anger that you're not able to achieve that. It's not so easy for you to achieve that. And you get into that anger, and then the cycle that continues like that. So even internally, you're not disturbed by any of the material things, like whether you have them or not. Like a yogi, a spiritual, a devotee goes even to that stage where like even scarcities come. Like you may be having just one thing to eat, not like a thing. Even then he's very peaceful. Like, oh, at least I have this thing. I can chant. My body is able to live like that. Most of the times, like we have so many restrictions in the food. Like I only want like this. I only want art. I only want like, so you unknowingly we're even attached to that also. We don't know that, but we're thinking that this is a simple thing. I can be attached, but really not. We are just complicating it. When we know the need of it, like we will use it for that. So you will be seeing that even internally, you are not agitated, you are not stressful, you're not seeking that. But even if you are internally seeking also, don't immediately worry that, oh, I'm not making progress. At least knowing that I'm not ready is also a progress. Like knowing that I'm hankering for them, which is not good, is also a progress. Because many of the times we think that hankering for material things, which I can buy, is genuine. That's what we think. Like, I'm not stealing from anybody. I'm not doing in an adharmic way. So what is the problem? My money, I am desiring, I'm hankering. That's how we generally think. So don't worry. Even knowing that I have a disease is the first stage to cure the disease. Many of us don't even know that we have disease, actually.
Thank you so much. Ila Mataji, can you unmute yourself?
Hare Krishna, everyone. Hare Krishna, Mataji. I love your words. They just so perfect. And we should abide by all this. Hopefully one day we'll get there. But in the meantime, the hardest thing that I'm encountering is, you are right, just what Mataji was saying just now, that you will hanker for less things as you do Krishna conscious, progress in that. But the thing is that it does make me feel very happy that I'm progressing even a little bit in that area, but it's not making everybody else happy. So how do we take that or ignore that? Because the thing is, we still have to mix with society, and the society isn't going to say anything, but the people in the household will. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, I know, Mataji. So why you are doing something now, it should be done 70, 80 years later, or like why you are living like a renounced person. So all these things we hear constantly from our relatives who show pityness on us, or like we will be saying like not seeking material things is some kind of a worry that we are not normal. It is so natural. Mataji, how do we deal them if we are consistent? Like, see, if we love them, we don't need to always try to explain to them or try to have an expectation that they should understand us. See, a small kid will not understand. Let's say you're taking a knife away from their hand. They will not like it. They think that knife is also a toy, and they may say that, Mom, you don't love me, you hate all these things. They say, like a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, when you stop the TV after 2 hours, saying no more TV, they say that you don't like me, you don't love me, and we don't take it serious. We think that, oh, he's immature, he's ignorant, he doesn't know. The same thing applies to many people who are having spiritual ignorance. They don't know what is reality, what really we should be hankering. So we should our smile should be an answer, and we should not take it seriously, or we should not try to argue with them or try to put them down, saying that, you are all not devotees, I'm a great devotee, I'm not. So we should just smile it away, and we still should love and move on. Then slowly they will see that how happy we are, even not having any of those things. Then they will also start becoming inquisitive about it. What is that making this person happy, even not having? And what is that not making us happy after having everything also? So Krishna consciousness is preached or is explained more better by just practicing it, Mataji. Practicing it sincerely and consistently. See, what we do is we sometimes stop practicing when we get a lot of these kind of things. So the more we are consistent, the more we are practicing, really, if they love us, if they are our near and dear ones, they will understand. The thing they want is us to be happy. So they are thinking that all these material things are going to give happiness. But if we are happy in any situation, then they start learning that. And we need to be just tolerant, patient with them, and thinking that they are still not at that stage to understand this. They are at a 3rd grade, and we are giving something for them to understand at a master's level. Very difficult to understand. So we just have to be consistent and keep ignoring it. And when we say ignoring, sometimes we unknowingly do, I don't care what you are saying, you don't know. We should not be ignoring in that way. We just smile and ignore. That's what I mean.
Yes. Okay, Mataji. Thank you. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji.
Harila Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you so much for giving such an inspiring class, Mataji. Very nice explanation. Normally, in the Dhyana Yoga chapter, people kind of get into they come to the stage where they get bored also. But you had made points so clear. It's really like a crystal clear point, Mataji. Thank you so much for coming to Partsarthi Foundation. Always you've been a help to Partsarthi, I know that. But such a nice class, Mataji. Thank you so much for. I'm impressed with the deities that you have. Is it a temple?
I forgot which temple, Prabhu. Some other devotees also asked me in another class. I told them I'm going to find, I have this wallpaper from so many years. I
Oh.
like them, so I just keep them.
So beautiful. So
yes.
beautiful.
Yeah, I also get distracted looking at them when I am giving a class because I so get involved in looking at them. I feel as if they are looking at me.
Yeah. Just like
Yeah.
Krishna Bhagwan, it looks like we have here Radha Nil Madhava in Houston,
Yes, he's
You
so
know,
beautiful.
very nice and smiling face of Radharani, and it's such a decorate. Oh, you decorate them? Oh.
No, these are not my deities, Prabhu. These are some temple deities. I just downloaded.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It cannot
Yes,
be.
no.
Thank
I
you
just
so
like them, so keep them as my background image.
Yes, Radha. Thank you so much for giving your Vani Association at least today.
Thank you for engaging me in service, Prabhu.
So with this, we don't have any more inquiries from our audience, so we should probably close our call. So Aradhana Mataji, will you please close the call at this point? Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for a very, very wonderful session. We are so glad always you are be in Partsarthi Foundation, as Harila Prabhuji said. So thank you so much for everything you did in Partsarthi Foundation, Mataji. All your services is really very, very nice, and we don't have any words to glorify you, Mataji. Thank you so much for everything. Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.
वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यश्च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः
अनंतकोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, हरिनाम
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.